It's time for some more Diomedes, where last time we were swarmed by the Amazons. They came at us with loads of armies, but altogether they didn't achieve that much. We stopped their massive invasion and even did a small invasion against them, which itself took down tons more of their armies. And now we're stealing some of their territory with a relatively free hand. They can't stop Diomedes anymore. We've also got our two armies that are going to be heading towards Troy right now. I'm going to send them up to try and do something or other. I had no clear plan about how this was going to work or whether it would be enough to work, but I thought let's go put some pressure on them, although I wasn't so confident as to not have another army defend the settlement they just took in the last part. So we're going to have this base be somewhat secure for our operations against Troy. The guys on Lesbos seem to take note of what's happening, because as soon as I move towards them, they declare war on me. Well, that's probably fine, because now we can attack their port closest to me and use that as a base. I was probably going to start a war with them anyway, to be fair. And now we're going to have a look at the actual objectives, mainly because this objective came up. Occupy Thebes. These are the epic objectives that you actually have to do to complete the game. And this one was a bit annoying because Thebes is controlled by my ally. However, you just automatically pass it if it's not controlled by an enemy or a neutral faction, I suppose. So, that's another mission out of the way. So far, we've done 7 of the epic missions. I haven't really mentioned them so far, because they were all random things I did by accident. We even get some bonus traits for completing that mission, even though we didn't do anything, so that's handy. So here's what we're actually supposed to be doing. We need to complete 5 more epic missions, and we need to wipe out the main Trojan factions, which I was going to do anyway, so that's good news. We actually don't have any epic missions, so you just have to wait. I'm not sure if it's based on turn count or you have to trigger the missions. At some point it will tell us to do something in particular 5 times, and we'll have to do those 5 things. In the meantime, I guess we'll just carry on taking down the Amazons. They had an army sneaking back to perhaps take back some of their territory. Diomedes just steps out and immediately flattens them. At this stage we can hope to just continue doing that, while they're going to be able to constantly bounce back. They're not going to be able to muster as much stuff as they had before, and we beat them before, so I'm pretty confident about all that. On Lesbos we land and take a port, as mentioned earlier. Not much there to stop us, so that's great. But from here, these two armies will need to be a bit more careful, because we're surrounded by enemy territory in all directions. And as you can see in the background there are billions of enemy armies around here. The Trojan main forces are starting to re-muster. They're all recruiting things back in their home territories. So there's going to be a lot more resistance as we move forward. At least I can replace some of my militia with some harpies, a nice overpowered unit, so that's all good. We'll want to move on and try to take the other areas in this island, really. I think we need to be somewhat methodical about this, because just going straight for Troy, for example, would likely end up with us being absolutely swarmed. As for Diomedes, we're going to move south now to complete the province I've started taking in this area. I was a little bit put off by the balance bar being kind of okay for the enemy with this walled attack. It's the sort of thing where it would be absolutely fine if we did it manually, but I didn't want to. So we did the save auto-resolve strategy. It was fine, we didn't lose any units, and all the stuff we lost will just come back, basically. Now for some important diplomacy. I'm able to get the nearby faction that the Rhodians called into the war out of the war, so that makes our southeast much more secure. And while I was here, I decided to throw a bunch of money at one of the Trojan ally factions to our north. We're not really facing them in any particular way, but this will just take the heat off our Trojan expedition a bit if I bribe a couple of the enemy armies out of that conflict. That's all good, and following on from that, we're going to do the same thing to Rhodes. I had to also use my dominance to actually get them out, because they only just joined the war, but it works. So with that, the southeast of the map is actually suddenly fine. Obviously they could just declare war on us again at some point, but we're going to trust them for now. It was good timing, because looks like they were about to actually attack me. We can now disband the forces I had guarding my random spot at the bottom of the map, and make back some of the money we just spent getting those peace treaty deals. Now on Lesbos we're going to do an ambush strat. We'll put the good army in ambush position, and the lesser army will stand on the road near the enemy. What I want is for their main force to come out of that walled settlement so we can attack it. Well, we actually do get the ambush, but it's not the one I wanted. The smaller support army comes and walks into the ambush. That kind of sucked because we could have defeated that army by just besieging the town and then attacking them separately. With the town still heavily defended, it is still hard for us to advance, so the ambush was wasted a little bit. We've even got some Trojans appearing back down near our base, so it's a good thing I did start making some trash there to defend it. Diomedes needs to go and attack another Amazon army that's appeared in this area. In this case, I thought it was going to be another classic stomp, but they actually have some presence on this balance bar, and there's another army right behind them. So for that reason, I thought I'll do this manually to make it go extremely well, because even though they've got some balance bar, I'm pretty sure the game's lying at this point. I feel like it overvalues the Amazons. They do have some equipment upgrades, but they're outnumbered, they're outclassed, and they're just going to have absolutely no chance whatsoever. So here we are, running at them. We came at them from the front and back at the same time because it was possible to just move around their little hill defense they'd set up. So that's nice, although I do like how the AI kind of curves its formation when you start outflanking them to try and defend multiple directions at once. In this case it won't help them, because even without charging from the back we could just kill them from the front, but here things are just going to be even worse for them as our giants are in amongst their archers. That's going to be nasty, and we're generally outflanking them all over the place, like with these two-handed axemen, a nice downhill charge into that blob which is going to try and rout out of there. Not going to go very well. Suffice to say, we soon chase down and kill everything. There's the result, absolutely annihilated them, and more magic replenishment. We managed to get back up to pretty much full strength after the fight as well. We somehow found some giants among the enemy to get our dead giants back. That worked out surprisingly well. Now we'll just carry on, plenty more targets for Diomedes to go after soon. Meanwhile, after my ambush plan up on Lesbos failed, I decided to essentially do it again, but in a slightly different way. First I was just going to do the same plan again, but a bit closer. Then I realised we could try and trigger a battle by having one army besiege the town, and the other army try to hide. So they might not see the second army, think it's worth a sally, go for it, and then have a very difficult sally. That's the idea behind that. I was also able to grab peace with Paris, and that's going to make this area a bit nicer looking for us. We're slightly less surrounded by enemies, we still have plenty of Hector forces nearby, but all these Paris settlements and armies are off the table for now. That will lessen the pressure. Hector's forces have us under siege to the south of Lesbos. This is a situation where we could win a sally potentially, but I wanted to see if they would attack me, so we could use the walls and towers to our advantage. So we'll just leave that place under siege and come back to it another time. As for Diomedes, we're now in the next turn, and as I move to attack a nearby Amazon settlement, we can make full use of night battle to first attack this small group on its own, absolutely annihilating them. Then we take down the settlement on its own. It has absolutely no chance. We'll pop another night battle just to flex on them, and there we go. Night battle remains the strongest ability in Total War because of situations where you can do that, and there are plenty of other cases where being able to just delete enemy armies out of a fight by clicking a button is handy. I then paid loads of money to those guys I just set under siege because we didn't get the sally, and what I decided to do is just ignore them. We could try and force the attack on the city, but it could be difficult. So I thought instead, because I don't really care about them, we'll bribe them out of the war, and now these armies will instead try to get to the mainland and start conquering Hector's territory. That's the stuff we really need to do here, and the longer we're not doing it, the more chances we're giving Hector to prepare a defense. We now get a mission, so here's what we're actually supposed to be doing in the game. We need to have Diomedes defeat 3 Trojan-type armies somewhere on the map. Easy enough. The issue is, he's actually quite far away from that front. It will take many turns to get there. And there's still stuff I want to do in this area. We might as well continue using our momentum against the Amazons to take more territory. So we know what we have to do, but I'm essentially not going to do it for now and just carry on as I was doing before. Here we get an ideal situation for attacking this walled settlement, because while that could be somewhat challenging to take, they have one general standing outside the walls. It's a classic Total War siege draw-out situation, where the whole thing gets turned into a field battle, and furthermore, the enemy's reinforcements were deployed in our deployment zone, so the battle starts immediately, We're attacking them as they come onto the map. They are charging downhill at us, but otherwise we'll have a nice advantage here. They're actually a little bit more uphill from us than is obvious at first when you're playing normally with the camera high above the ground. At ground level, you can see that the collision is actually above where the ground is visually, so they're running more downhill at me than it appeared. Well, that's fine, at least we get flying chariots as a trade-off. We're going to come in here on the flanks and cause some trouble for these archers and exposed units that will have absolutely no chance against these guys. They will be able to rout off the field, which is a shame because in a siege draw-out we want to kill as many enemies as possible because there will just be this battle again immediately after this. But for now, it's fine. This unit's nice and exposed to slinger attacks. Being uphill means you have great line of sight on them, so that's something at least. We soon get their remaining troops into a big ball and start just hacking them to pieces, attacking from multiple sides. They will be able to escape due to some jank, but still, we're going to do plenty of damage here and mostly kill the garrison army of the city. Some more units actually appeared later. I think I'd managed to block the deployment zone of the reinforcements by attacking the first wave, so some of the later units didn't spawn until later when I'd moved away. An interesting thing to note, I'm sure there are some big exploits you can do using this mechanic, which I'm pretty sure wasn't in the other Total War games either. They would just spawn right on top of you if you were in the way. For now though, those newly spawned units, well, they just spawn into a mosh of death and die also. That's fine. We've taken them down big time. Essentially we took 0 casualties because while we did lose some troops, they're going to come back as we somehow recruit the prisoners into our various units that they shouldn't be compatible with. Then there'll be another battle where again we'll take virtually no casualties, we'll just auto-resolve those walls. This will also complete the local province, which is always nice as well. And yet another loss for the Amazons, who are really being cut down to size. Decided that since the situation around Lesbos is vaguely dodgy, might as well throw up another stack of trash here to try and defend a local base if we need to do so. Meanwhile, most of our stuff will carry on towards the mainland, and the nearby port is not very defended. Leading to that, we just absolutely annihilated them. And there we go, now we've got a mainland base as well. But there are a fair few Trojans in the area. There's a full stack just across the water at another port to the north. There are other units around to the southwest of Lesbos to worry about. And it turns out there's even more than that, as we'll see in a second. I've got this other stack that's now appearing. This is the stack that was defending our home territory, but we really don't need it to be there, so it's been sailing across the map, and here it is, arriving, now quite near the siege that the Trojans have us under. Thought they might be able to help out. Diomedes will now start storming north. We need to bring him north towards the Trojan front. But we might as well, on the way, kill all of the Amazons. There was their faction leader going down again. We probably got a bunch of dominance for that, but I think my dominance has been maxed out for most of the campaign. Not really using it, but you do actually get buffs on your army for having high dominance, so there's still some purpose to it. I was popping the prayer to Zeus there, because I originally thought maybe I can get peace and military access with the Amazons to move through them faster. We are close to peace. I ended up not going with that plan though, mainly because it's just easier to kill them instead in this situation. I wanted to push forward and take some more Hector territory, but there's another full stack right there, so they've got 2 armies in that area. There's another one sneaking around to the south too. Because we're somewhat surrounded, I decided to leave my inferior army guarding the port, so we'll have that stack of trash ready in case the guys to the north, for example, sail across and attack it, which they certainly could. The better army will lay an ambush on the road in case the other army to the northeast comes down that road. There is a forest there, but we can't actually get a good ambush percentage, unfortunately. I feel like someone explained it to me once. It's actually to do with the region and not the territory, or not the terrain, sorry, on the map. It's just deceptive. And in old games it was based on the terrain on the map. As for that siege to the south, well, it ended because the enemy army started running off. I was going to heavily pursue them, but I noted that other fleet in the sea could come and attack my small fleet here, so I decided to be a bit more careful and stay back. Figured we've got them sort of locked into a corner there, so they're not going to be able to take the town. However, we have some trouble. Not only does my ambush not work, but those guys who I was worried would cross the sea and attack the port just walked around and joined the land assault down the road. So that's 2 stacks coming at us. We've also got 2 stacks right here, going after my fleet in the sea, as I was just worrying about. Luckily, by not advancing them very far, they actually can't catch us this turn, which cannot be said for the road defense army. Those 2 enemy stacks do press forward and start this battle. We can't escape, and this time the Trojans have discovered units, so we're in a bit of trouble. They've got some guards of Troy, presumably their top tier unit, and some middling tier units like the shielded spearmen and good swordsmen. Inconvenient for us. Our army's not that bad, but it's still middling tier and now outnumbered. The balance bar's less than ideal. For this engagement, we've got a big hidden flank in this forest that I'm deployed next to, and we also have an advantage because you can see the first army attacked us on its own. That means the second army will take a while to show up, and I was hoping that these chariots would be able to just distract them. I'm sending the chariots to go and be generally at the back of the map, cause some mischief, and maybe buy us some more time to bring down this first army. All we're going to do is advance on both flanks and try to encircle them. Meanwhile, the main brawl is getting started. I've got a couple of units going for the enemy's skirmish line, but with the enemy's second army about to arrive, that might not be so good. And in comes the big flank attack from the forest with all of our runner units. We'll be able to easily get some rear attacks, although one unit was left behind because the enemy found them out there. Handily, it's a spear unit they're fighting, and we've got a sword unit, so we get some bonus damage there, should go well. My plan with the chariots, well, it didn't work even a little bit. None of the enemy's second army paid them any attention. So now all of these big boys are running straight towards the main fight. Just what we don't need, because as we come in to encircle the enemy, they're coming in right now to encircle us. It's becoming a race. Maybe we can end this first fight before the second one starts, and then we might be okay. So in we go to find out, essentially. We're certainly outnumbered in some of these pockets, but we do have slingers also supporting us, which will help out. Not that much though against armoured and shielded units. We grab a couple of routes there on the right and free up a unit or two. I've also got one unit that, after running towards the enemy skirmishers, is now acting as something of a breakwater by just absorbing some aggro back there. They're in trouble, and this spear unit here is going to face the same issue, but having a couple of units just out at the other end of the field will help distract the enemy second army. I'm getting some more use out of the chariots now, as the enemy skirmishers begin to be less guarded by other units. We can just run them over, stop them shooting. That's all good stuff. Looks like we are going to be sacrificing some guys though to keep a few enemy units out of the fight. Nowhere near enough. We are going to be facing some big rear attacks, both ranged attacks and melee attacks, and these guards of Troy presumably are quite good. Didn't look at their stats, but I think they are one of the top tier units. Looks like we won that little fight out in the jungle, so one more unit will be coming to join the fight on our side. But generally speaking, this fight's getting a little bit bad for us. We're losing the center. Our general is in combat with the enemy general somewhere in here. All of our allied troops around us seem to be gone at this point, so it's not looking very good for the main battle line. And my sacrifice is about to go back there as well. This fight is now an enormous mess, as you can see, just stuff all over the place. The balance bar's still about even, so that's something. We're switching now to the regular footage, because in the replay, my commander killed their commander, but in the real battle, it was the other way around. Our commander dies at this point, making things worse for us. You can also see I'm playing in slow motion. This is my response to the chaos of the battle. We can double the amount of micro available by halving the speed of time, a handy ability for any commander, no doubt. How much it's helping, I'm not quite sure. Basically, we're just running about wildly at this stage. Very little order left in this battle, it's just pockets all over the place. Our slingers are still relatively unmolested. They're grabbing some more kills, but the enemy are starting to get melee units back there. We've got some more enemy routes on that right flank, so more units will be freed up. We're not out of the fight yet, mainly just on that right flank. We've got 5 units somewhat alive, nothing in the center, and a few on the left who are doing a decent job of just keeping the enemy occupied for now. Especially here where our slingers are shooting into this blob and very, very slowly killing the guards of Troy. Again, that's going to be a unit that's not very vulnerable to slinger attacks, but it's something, stacking some extra damage on top of the minor damage they're probably taking in melee against my stuff there. But yes, our stuff is unfortunately not going to be able to win that fight on its own. Looks like the chariots are having a good time just killing skirmishers in the background. That's fine, they're probably racking up hundreds of kills out there. The balance bar's still even, so the two sides are dying at a pretty consistent rate, that's something. Going to pop off the guard mode on these slingers. This should allow them to keep shooting while the enemy are in melee with them, which is handy, a classic Total War trick. Not sure what games it works in, this might be one of them and I didn't even check, but a good idea, I expect. And yes, the blobs of fight around the field just carry on, usually with our side eventually dying, but we're killing enemies at the same time. Our morale is high enough that they are having to grind us down pretty much to the last man in most of the fight, so we're doing plenty of return damage, and there's that little fight on the edge of the forest that's actually going okay for us. Now our slingers are in trouble as several units are engaging them in melee, but it's not all that bad because we still have our chariots, and I do remember in my previous campaign finding chariots can be a real trump card because when they run enemy units over they lose morale, and as we saw right there, we just took out 2 of the enemy Guard of Troy units at once by just running into them with the chariots. The chariots are weak against spear units and they're probably super weak against elite spear units like this. But by just running them over, they can't get any attack animations off. You get the morale attack. And now we've got a line of units freed up. We can actually restore some order to the fight and stand in a formation. The enemy are finishing off my final groups, but now they're going to face something that looks a little bit organised. Our chariots will wait off to the edge. We'll receive the enemy on our front line and then of course attack again with the chariots. Here's one example. I basically did this to every individual unit along the line, although I don't have much footage of it, because I was mainly trying to take screenshots of it and stopping time all the time. But anyway, it totally works, I assure you. You can see plenty of enemy units routing all over the place, and as they rout, we get in there and slaughter them. This battle suddenly is going in our favour right at the very end with essentially nothing left. We're going to scrape through. Need to stay out of the way as that free Guards of Troy unit is going for my chariots, but broadly speaking, we're fine. We finish off a few enemies, form up again to receive the final Guards of Troy unit, and then very slowly and exhaustedly charge into them with the chariots there. Just about knocks them over, routs the unit, there we go. Now I will chase down the enemy with what I can. The chariots of course can grab a couple more kills as the enemy leave. Bringing us to this final result. We did get absolutely mauled, but because we win, the unit deletion threshold is a little bit higher than it will be for the enemy. So we only lost like 2 or 3 units. We lost our commander, which is a shame because it was a good one. The enemy lost loads of units. When you take replenishment into account, because we are in our own territory, we're going to have lost about half of our army to take down about 1.5 enemy armies. So while that was a bit close, overall it was good. Although we can't follow it up very easily because their survivors are in reinforcement range of a heavily garrisoned town, so even throwing in my trash stack doesn't allow us to quickly auto-resolve and finish this whole thing off. So at the start of the next part, we'll do a field battle against the enemy's garrison essentially and a few survivors of the previous battle, and see if we can glean some momentum against Hector from this. And of course, eventually Diomedes needs to show up and not only close this war out, but close this campaign out.